Chamber of Commerce. And even though they reside in a depot, unlike the railroad, we didn't quite get started on time, but you know, we're only a minute late. Even in Germany, if you got a couple of minutes for the Snell suit, that's probably enough. I want to welcome you all here this morning, and it's my pleasure to introduce our two guests, Senator Mark Sigebart and Representative Brian Best. And remember, this is his freshman first time, but he only gets one. Next week you can beat up on him. This week you can't. I promised him that. All right.
Remember that, everybody, please. I get to use this ace in the hole one time.
We use a couple of rules with this Chamber Legislative Forum, and one of those is we're going to give the two gentlemen some time for some opening remarks, and followed by 2 or 3 questions that the Chamber Legislative Committee has prepared and shared with the representative and the senator sometime this past week. And then after that, we'll open it to questions from the floor. I would ask you, if you have a question, to identify yourself so the gentlemen know who they're speaking to. They probably already know most of you anyway, but it might help the rest of us. And in addition to that, if you would please, if your question pertains, in other words, if you're representing the Farm Bureau or the Democratic Party, please indicate that, all right? If it's a personal question, no bother to do that. Any questions before we get started? Gentlemen, did you flip a coin, or you want me to do that?
I can start if you like.
Oh, volunteered the first day.
Yeah, I'm not scared. Is it easier if I stand? Can you see me better? Okay, I'd be glad to do that, and you can probably hear me better too. So, first of all, I want to thank John and the Chamber for hosting this, and thank you all for coming out today. This is the end of my 3rd week as a representative representing your district. The first week was a lot of pomp and circumstances. A lot of things really don't get done. A whole lot doesn't get done. And then we kind of hit the road the 2nd week, and we're rolling. And I've learned a lot in 2 weeks, and I've got a lot to learn. The most important thing I can do, I believe, is represent this district as a citizen of this district. As you all know, I'm a Republican, and I have conservative values, but at the same time, I realize that the most important thing in a pragmatic way is to serve this district, to do everything I can to improve the lives of citizens. So if you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, or if you're independent, it doesn't matter. I will listen to you, and I hope that we have a very transparent relationship. I want to have a transparent relationship with the whole district. And starting out, I guess you can see here on the legislative forum, my email is on here, and please feel free to email me about any issues that you have. I will respond. I can't tell you how proud I am to be doing this and to be representing all the folks that live here. I will be honest with you, and the most important thing I believe I can do at this point is I'm getting as much information as fast as I can, but I will tell you if I don't know, and I will get back to you as soon as possible to give you answers. As John said, I think I get to use my freshman ace in the hole one time, and that's today. But after today, and today, I'll have a lot of answers, and I'll be able to answer questions, but I just want you to know I'm going to be honest with you if I don't know, and I'll tell you. I'm not going to make anything up, and we go from there. You want to go ahead?
Sure. Now that you started the tradition of standing. Well, it's great to be here this morning. Sorry I was late. I always figure I can get to Carroll in half an hour, and Some days you can and some days you can't. This is one of those that seems to get me here a little bit late, so I apologize for that. But I will hang around afterwards if you want to talk to me. This has been week 3 of the session. As Brian said, mostly the first 2 weeks there's pomp and circumstance and eating. But now the bills are starting to flow, and on Thursday I got assigned as 6 subcommittees on human resource bills. Brian and I share duties on the Human Resources Committee, he in the House, I in the Senate, and we also share the HHS budget sub, which is a standing subcommittee for appropriations for the Health and Human Service budget. Now, I'd like to say that everything is really in good shape in the Health and Human Service budget, but it in my mind is a disaster, and it's a very expensive disaster. And that one budget alone is probably driving us to cut back in a lot of areas where we'd like to increase the budget. It's using up most of our free money, if not all of it. The federal matching assistance percentage, which is the amount of dollars the state has to kick in for Medicaid, has gone up $200 million from a year ago, and that's taken most of the new money that we have in the state that's projected for the coming year. So that's really driving the shortages that we're going to have in this next year. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and it's almost causing me mental illness just to talk about this all, because it's very depressing when you hear the need that's out there and the inability of Iowa to meet those needs. Now, is Iowa the only place in the nation that's having this problem? No. It's a train wreck all over the country, as I read. And probably the most critical piece of this that really disturbs me is the fact that we're not reaching our kids and providing service for them for mental illness. So I know this is a big deal for schools as well, and if we can somehow, we don't even have programs that work well yet for this need, and that's kind of the way it is all over the country. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later on because it'll come up during one of our other sections of today's forum. So with that, glad you're here. We really need to hear from you today. We can talk all day if you want us to. Brian probably can, I probably can't, because I can't stand that long. But stick around and let me know what you're thinking on some of these subjects. So thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your opening statement. Hey, I was very remiss this morning. I did not thank our host, the Nancy Carroll Community School District. Superintendent, almost Dr. Cordes is AWOL this morning, but a couple of his board members are here with us this morning. And sir, thank you very much for hosting this legislative forum. Great crowd this morning. We'll begin with our first questions, and that is, would both of you please give some comments, your thoughts about the state of the state and the state of the court addresses this past couple of weeks.
Okay. First of all, the state of the state, we brought in about $200 million over projected this year, and of that $200 million, $100 million went into the school system, and I'm going to kind of follow a little bit about what Mark said about the issues we have and the problems we have with Medicaid. I believe that Medicaid has grown faster than all of the other agencies that we have combined, and that's a lot of our problem. Part of the thing that I want to do is try to find a way to use that budget more efficiently, and I think one of the things that's happened now is the governor is trying to help contain those costs a little bit by the managed care initiative that he's doing, and we're going to see how that goes. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows where this is going, and it does make it hard to set Medicaid budgets when you are going into a whole new area that nobody's really familiar with. I think a very important thing for the growth in our state is getting a skilled workforce, and in a lot of cases, I believe we have we have skilled jobs that are looking for people to take those jobs. We need more humans in our state and in our districts to use or to go into those jobs and help develop our economy. So I think that's one area that I'm very interested in. And that, I think, is going to, community colleges, I believe, are going to play a very big role in that. One thing that I noticed, it seems like a lot of kids graduate from high school and they want to go on to four-year colleges, and that's great. But I think it'd be nice to have an initiative where kids in schools learn about skills maybe a little bit earlier in life, maybe at the junior high level or something like that, where they're finding out that to be a plumber, electrician, diesel mechanic, whatever those things are, a welder, we need those kind of, we need people to fill those positions. And I don't believe that it's getting done at this point. And anything we can do to make sure that those folks are encouraged and understand what those types of jobs are about would be good. I believe there's probably a lot of kids graduating from four-year colleges going out and making considerably less than somebody with a two-year degree that might graduate and go into a skill. So that's one area that I'm very interested in. And I'll let you go from here.
The State of the State address, the governor gives that the Tuesday after the first day of session. And his address this year, the state is in good shape actually budget-wise, because we had such a surplus here a couple years ago. We're spending that down, and I think it was, you don't really see the state's budget until you get to that State of the State address. It's presented by the governor at the State of the State address. And actually the first time you see the book, and why we get 3 of them is a mystery to me, because every one of them is about that thick. What he presented after he State of the State address was a budget that actually deficit spends in the end. And because of the things I was talking about before, the increase in Medicaid reimbursement, and we have about a $200 million shortfall in the proposed budget that the governor's giving to us, and so therein lies the problem. Already we're starting with 1 foot in the hole. So he also dropped another bomb, and that which fell right into Brian and I's lap, and that's the fact that he's proposing to close 2 of our mental health institutes, which are in Clarinda, one in Clarinda and one in Mount Pleasant. There's actually 4 in the state. They were all built back in the early 1900s, and at one time each one could handle 1,700 clients. And you know, the world has changed a lot since the beginning of the 20th century. We're in the 21st century now. And the law has changed. The courts have said that you no longer can institutionalize people just because that's what we used to do. There's a lot of methods now that you can put them in community-based type services, which community-based means that actually they stay in their communities and live right in the community and work there just like they had no problem at all, rather than being institutionalized in one of those 4 big institutions we used to have. The other 2, by the way, are Cherokee and at Independence. Now, amazingly enough, there was a penitentiary both in Clarinda and in Mount Pleasant that sort of cooperated together with the mental health institutes for those patients that were significantly violent and needed to be in a room that has bars on it, you see. So that whole mechanism has changed now since the Supreme Court, in a decision that is commonly called the Olmstead ruling, because that was the people that filed the suit from Georgia, and it was a suit that changed the way we look at providing service for mentally ill people. The system, as I said, it seems to be fairly broken across the whole country. Nobody really has good answers for how to handle this problem. So that was another major thing, the governor's unbalanced budget and his proposal to close 2 of those institutions. you want to talk about the state, there is some good news, however, that came from the Supreme Court Justice, and in his talks, he's got some great innovations now with his computer system that's up to speed so that they can be more efficient in that regard. But he talks a lot about things called drug courts, which are changing the way and keeping people out of prison, actually, because what they do in a drug court, and maybe the county attorney can help me out if he's got actual facts on this, but what they do is they sit down with the incarcerated person and their family and work out a plan on how to get them off of drugs rather than putting them in jail and allowing that system to work it out. It keeps them out of jail, it keeps them at home, it keeps them with their families, and they seem to be having very good results. Now, this idea is also used other places in what's called family courts, and that deals with juveniles, and it keeps them out of being placed in detention somewhere, and it keeps them with their family, and also is working quite well. And as I was hearing the other day, there's all kinds of courts like this in the United States now. There's some places that have, there's even veterans courts, because we have a lot of veterans that are coming back with mental illness, and there's some very sad stories of things that have happened to our veterans that have come back with stress syndrome and that sort of thing. So if we can keep people out of jail and work and still improving through these drug courts, I think that's a great idea, and that's, I think, one of the best messages he had, that is working quite well here in the state. So with that, I'll stop.
Go to the next question here. Let
Brian answered the state of the judicial.
The gentleman, you pretty much answered the third question, and that's what committees you're assigned to this year. Both of you sharing some work on mental health. Are there others that you could point out to us that you're currently involved with?
Yeah. I'm on the Human Resources Policy Committee and also on the Human Resources Appropriations Committee, and I believe we share that same issue there too. I'm also the vice chair of the Appropriations Committee, so I serve Representative David Heaton, who is the chairman of that committee. On transportation, I'm the vice chair of transportation, and the chair of that committee is Josh Burns. I'm on economic growth, and I'm on natural resources committee. Transportation, obviously, is going to be the committee who takes on the gas tax and the infrastructure issues that we're having right now. And so that's going to be a very important committee, and I'm very excited about being on that committee, actually. That's going to be very important. As the Human Resources Approps Vice Chair, that's also a very complicated and a committee. We're trying to figure out how to dole out $1.75 billion worth of Medicaid funds that need to go to a lot of deserving organizations, and it's that's a very daunting task. But again, I'm looking forward to that one. Economic growth is a very exciting committee. That committee has got some real movers and shakers, so we're trying to think of some great ideas that we can do to attract more young Iowans to come into the state or stay in the state, and to develop jobs. And so those are my main committees at this point. Yeah, along with natural resources too. So.
I'm on the Veterans Affairs Committee this year as the ranking member. Now, what is it? Does everybody here understand what a ranking member is? It just means he's like the chairman of the minority party. This works, so you can have a ranking member in the House that would be a Democrat, and in the Senate, the ranking members. Every time you hear the word ranking member, it just means he's the chairman of the minority, which is where I'm at, the majority of the minority party. It also means that when bills are assigned to a committee, the ranking members get to choose the member of their minority that's going to be that original subcommittee panel of 3 people that decide whether a bill should keep going or stop in the subcommittee. Because when a bill is introduced, the first thing that happens is it goes to the majority party, And the chairman of whatever bill, whatever committee it fits under, is either can assign it to a subcommittee or not. And if they assign it, then they pass it on down to the chairman and the ranking member to decide who is actually going to sit on that committee and listen to the bill presentation and decide whether it should go forward or not, or whether it needs amendments. And just to further that process, if it would get voted out of a subcommittee, then it goes to the full committee. Like in Veterans Affairs, there's a committee of about 17 members, senators, and there's a majority of the senators in that committee are of the majority party, of course. So 3 get assigned to the subcommittee. They say vote yes. Then it goes to the full committee, and they present it there. And if it passes the full committee, then it's put on the calendar, it's called. The calendar just means it's eligible to come to the floor whenever the majority leader, in that case in the Senate is Michael Groundstal, decides he wants to run that bill on the floor. And it works the same way in the House. There, of course, it's Greg Paulson, who's the Speaker of the House, would decide when a bill that's been voted out of a full committee can come up on the floor. Have we had any of those yet? Actually, we've only taken 1 vote in the Senate this week, and it was on a resolution, which is not as powerful as a bill. The resolution was just recognizing Ellsworth Community College for being 125 years old. So, have we been busy? You bet. We passed 1 thing, recognizing Ellsworth Community College. Not that they don't need recognizing, they do, but it's going to get considerably busier than that here. Because, like I said, last Thursday I was dropped in my lap 6 subcommittees that of all human resource type bills to address, and I can't really tell you what they are because I haven't studied them that much because I just got them on Thursday. But committees are starting to really pick it up. And you meet about anywhere you can find a spot. Sometimes that committee will meet in the hallway, I think, because there's just such a need for rooms there to get people together. But typically, it's in the Senate. You meet in the lounge actually, and it'll be full of at a subcommittee. Anybody can go to a subcommittee. If you have a bill that's finally been written and got assigned to a subcommittee, you're more than welcome to go to that subcommittee meeting, along with every lobbyist that has a stake in the game, and explain why you think this bill should proceed from there. So it's just a madhouse. In the Senate lobby, there's 2 big tables, and there'll be 1 subcommittee at one table and another one at the other. So you can imagine, you know, you're sometimes screaming at the top of your lungs just to be able to hear the other person, or they hear you, and it's quite a procedure. But they say making bills is like watching salami being made, and it's a pretty good correlation. It kind of goes from a mess into something that looks like a bologna. Now that's a bad. We go from call a law a bunch of baloney, but sometimes it is a bunch of balonies.
Gentlemen, you've already shared a little bit of your passion with us, so I'm going to, as I usually do, I'm not very good with following directions. I don't know. Anyway, what I'd like you to do is tell us the 2 most important things that you're very passionate about this year.
Okay. I think the 2 most important things that I believe that we need to do this year is we need to take on infrastructure. That is a very important thing. And part of my campaign was talking about how we could make laws that encourage people to work. And one thing that I'm working on right now, and this will be my first bill draft. Hopefully it comes to fruition. But one thing that I've seen, and I talked about a little bit about this in the past, is child care assistance. And you'll see situations where a young mother has 2 children, and she's trying to work her way up, and she's getting some assistance from the state for her child care. And she might be working at a nursing home as a CNA, whatever the case is, and she gets a little overtime. And I know this from past experiences because I was told about this from from one of my constituents. She gets a little overtime, and she takes that check home, and she's really happy about it. Then she finds out from the state that every dime that they put into her child care assistance for that month is going to be taken away. And what they call that is they call that falling off the cliff, where a person is penalized for working too much. So what I'd like to see, and what I'm hoping to do, is draft a formula where if that person were to work a certain amount of time and to draw in a certain amount of money, that she wouldn't be penalized. It'd be a formula where she would be given less from the state, but she would still be rewarded for working extra and putting in more time and getting those hours in. So that's the first thing that I'm going to draft, and I hope that goes somewhere. The second one is infrastructure and our roads. I believe rural Iowa is definitely hurting. I think we can all agree to that. And so my belief is that we do need to look at the dime tax. And there's a lot of different things out there, a lot of different ideas, but I think that is the simplest way for us to do it. And I campaigned saying that I wasn't going to be one who wanted to raise taxes, but the way I see this is that when you have counties that have to bond in order to fix their roads, that tax is being passed on. By doing nothing, we're forcing the counties into taxing. And so by doing this with the dime tax, I at least believe it's a user tax, and a 85-year-old woman who's living in her home isn't going to see her property taxes go up in order to fix the roads. It's going to be the folks that are using the roads. They estimate that 15% of the people that buy gas in Iowa are from out of state, so they'll have a little bit of into that too. So those are two very important things. I think another big issue this session is going to be the lawsuit that the City of Des Moines has put on our rural areas. I think that's going to come to play, and where that's going to end up, I don't know, but I think it's going to be talked about a lot in the legislature this year.
Two most important issues to me, I've talked about one already, is the mental health institutes that are closing and the mental health budget. That's going to take the whole session of iron these things out, and DHS is proposing that we take $51 million out of that system in 6 months. So for the county supervisors that are here, if you're doing your budgets and your $100,000 need to come out of your budget, I'm just saying this fictitiously because I know it on my own circumstances in Crawford County. When we tried to find $100,000 to take out of a county budget, it was down to counting pencils. It really was. And to take out $51 million out of one department in 6 months is literally a train wreck, and it's becoming very difficult. And most of our discussions are on right now are on the two mental health institutes that are proposed to be closed, and it's a struggle. The other big issue that doesn't get any easier is water quality. Of course, water quality is an issue, and it involves Carroll County as well, because we're all here in the Raccoon River watershed, and you know the story. The Des Moines Water Works has sued both Calhoun County and Sac County and Buena Vista County over high nitrates. They determined that the nitrates were coming from the drainage districts in those 3 counties, and are suing to get something done about that. And they would like to have drainage districts declared point sources in the lawsuit, but their lawsuit stated that their notification was that they had 60 days to respond to the counties did to the Des Moines Water Works over this before they would sue. And we're about 30 days into it, and I know the BV County attorney there is visiting with them, and there's drainage districts have their own lawyer and legal system, so they're sitting down and we're trying to work this out before the 60-day period comes to an end. And what does this do for me? Well, now I get invited to talk to the Iowa River Revival Group in Des Moines next week. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I don't know that they've ever seen a farmer before. So if they've got a real question, I think I can provide them with a real answer. And but that's a major issue. I think there's good news in this, however, because I think this is shining a bright light on a problem that we've been trying to solve as farmers for a long time, and that is the leaching of nitrates out of our soils and ended up in our water systems. Now, when it gets as far down as Des Moines from here, I think they were figuring when it gets over 10 milligrams per liter, which is about 10 parts per million, I think. The EPA says drinking water has to have a lower amount in it than that, and when it gets above that 10 parts per million, the blue baby syndrome, which I don't know if anybody here has ever had a blue baby, but it actually water that a baby would drink, if they get enough of it, will actually turn their complexion blue. They'll look blue, like they're, because it's starving their blood for oxygen, I suppose. But in the Des Moines, it was they turned their nitrate machine on to take it out right after Thanksgiving this year, and I think it was up. What did I say? It was 13 or 14 parts per million. It was up about to 20 parts per million, I believe. So that caused them to start their nitrate machine, and it's been on ever since. And it cost them about $4,000 to $5,000 a day to run that. The ironic part of this whole situation is after they take that nitrate out, they only have one recourse on what to do with it, and that's put it back in the river below where they take it out of, which is the strangest thing you've ever heard. I mean, they're as liable for a lawsuit over that as we are probably for having drainage districts with high nitrates. Nitrates are like gold. Once they're in the system, you can't tell where it came from. If you have a gold ring on your finger, you don't know. That might have been in Solomon's temple. You don't know where gold comes from, because once it's dissolved into a block of gold, there's no way to trace where it came from. And one of the things, I went back to my old agronomy book on water quality, and the first paragraph under nitrates, it says there's 33,000 pounds of nitrogen in the air above every acre in Iowa. Now, none of that is available to the plant, however. And so, you know, we do get nitrogen from the air every time we have a thunderstorm, because the action of lightning actually will combine the nitrate to the water and put it on the ground. So if your lawn looks a lot greener after a heavy thunderstorm, that's why, because you're getting nitrates directly to the ground from that thunderstorm. There's a lot of places nitrates could come from. It comes from just the degradation of the plant material on the land itself. Your humus, the best farmland you have, has a lot of nitrification, it's called, and which produces the nitrate that every time it rains. And then we had such a strange event too, in that 2 years ago, I can remember last spring increasing my crop insurance because I was afraid we weren't going to get a crop because of drought. And if you go back and look at the last couple of years before last spring, we had tile lines that hadn't run for a couple of years. And if you look, and they've been keeping records on the raccoon that show that the nitrogens in the nitrate levels in the raccoon have been going down for those 2 years. But it basically was because if it doesn't rain, it doesn't go down the river. It stays right where it was. And then we had last spring. Started out very dry, as I said. And then we had the wettest April and May on record. I think, well, you all know what happened. So there was nitrates that had been there for a couple of years probably, and just waiting to be combined with the water and go down through the soil system. And then all of a sudden they spiked down at Des Moines. And so we kind of loaded the soil structure with the ability to move nitrates in it with a drought that hadn't removed any slowly over that 2-year period or 3 years that we've been in a drought. We're still in a drought in some areas in Iowa, if you can believe that. And so we kind of were set up for a disaster that was going to occur with high water and lots of rainfall that happened last spring. So my hope is we'll get a handle on this. There's some great research now. We've been working on water quality for 10 years, ever since Governor Vilsack started in about the year 2000, and we're getting some significant results from retention ponds, and that what they need to do probably is to create a new wetland at the end of every drainage district. And a lot of that can take from 50 to 75% of the nitrate out of the water if you do that. That all costs a lot of money. And the other good news is here that since Des Moines is shining such a bright light on this problem now, I think we last year approved what they requested, $6 million, and the governor vetoed a little bit of it, but I believe they're asking for $7.5 million this year for water quality, and I'm sure it will pass and will be in the bill, and the governor probably will not veto it just because it's such an issue right now. So I think things are going to end up fine in the end. So that's my hope. Those are my two big issues. So.
Thank you for your comments and your educations. I appreciate, Senator, that you led us through the dialogue there about how a committee works, et cetera. And that's part of what the legislative committee is trying to do, is to get the general public a little better educated on how the process works, so we understand it. Now I would start taking questions from the floor.
We got Standerberg.
Ladies first, sir.
Thank you.
Ladies first. You're next, Don.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm Rhonda Mart. I'm the director at New Hope, and I want to speak a little bit this morning about what you've already talked about, and that is the Health and Human Services budget that was presented to you, I believe, this Tuesday by the Legislative Services Agency. You talked a little bit about the impact of it. I want to talk a little bit more. Senator Sigebar, you had indicated that there is a planned cut of $51 million in the first 6 months of January through June of 2016 for disability services. Not only is that $51 million, but there's a second $51 million planned to be cut in 2017. And at this year, they are, in your report, the governor is recommending a $13.2 million cut to home and community-based services funding, which is the Medicaid funding that supports individuals to live and work in the community. And that's happening at the same time that the governor has recommended an increase to Woodward and Glenwood, who are supposed to be decreasing their census and assisting those individuals into supports in the community. At the same time, in the budget is a rebasing, a full cost rebasing increase to hospitals, nursing homes, and home health services. So as you said, it's a disaster, and the implications of those kind of cuts, you can't imagine what it will do to the system.
Can I make a little point here? Because as I said before, the initiative wants everything to move into community-based services, and as Rhonda says right now, that's getting cut as well. So if you want to increase the community-based services, how do you do it by cutting it by 51?
Well, and it's getting cut while the state-run schools are getting increases. And I think every good leader, when a problem is brought to them, it's, okay, so what solutions do you have? And I would suggest to you, as you learn more about the Health and Human Service budget and you visit with your constituents, you ask providers of disability services, what kind of increase in Medicaid revenues have you received in the previous years? What kind, 80% of our expenses are on wages and benefits to our employees. So ask, what kind of wage increases have you been able to give to your employees? What I would really encourage you to ask of the state is what has been the increase in the burden of regulations, oversight, and reporting that has added expenses to the Medicaid disability service system. So I ask you, you have a large number of very vulnerable citizens in your region, of which you are both ranking member and vice chair of this committee. What stand are you going to take on this? How are you going to advocate for a large number of your citizens?
waiting for him to go first.
Oh, I'll go first. No, I'm not scared. I'll go. A question I would like to ask is, when you look at what they're paying the state-run institutions, why is their budget being increased while yours is being decreased? And what does it cost per diem for those patients that are in those institutions compared to what yours is? I know that you do it for about half of what it costs per diem to to institutionalize somebody in the other two hospitals. So that would be the question I would like to ask them, and see if we could get a better, a fairer playing ground in that area. That's one thing that I think they need to look at very carefully.
Well, there isn't a possibility for hope. Some of this, there's a bill presented in the Congress, actually, that tries to improve the funding for mental health issues. And since we've had a change in that regard, maybe there will be some extra funds from the feds as far as Medicaid is concerned. So there's 6% of Iowans, which are about 3 million of, have mental illness, which means there's 180,000 people in Iowa that could use some help with their mental illness problems. I don't have a good answer for this. It just takes a lot of money, and it's to the point where it's a national crisis, actually, is what it is right now. So I guess working on our legislators and making them aware of the problem, if they're not already, is important. But somewhere along the line, personal responsibility has to come in. And families, you know, government takes over where families leave off anymore. And families are fewer and fewer, actually. And that's not a good situation, because how did we handle this in the old days? Well, I kind of went through this when I was in my first year as a supervisor. We closed the county home in Crawford County. And all the same things we were worried about now, we were worried about then. But in the end, those 10 residents of that county home ended up in nursing homes and or community-based residential facilities, that they were much better off than they were out there on that old county farm. So we need to grow our facilities out there. And one of the things from mental health redesign was to make some more options out there for services in the community. And there you have local control, and maybe it's probably the cheapest place to go as far as the taxpayer is concerned. But if we bankrupt our state trying to do this, then how do we serve these people? So, you know, the budget is, I haven't given you a good answer. And I don't know that I have a good answer. It's just that's why it's such a difficult subject to get your arms around. The services that are out there and the system that we have is just almost a nightmare sometimes. So I've been there 3 years now. I'm not too far past being a freshman, and it's still a struggle to understand how this whole system works. I've asked them for a flow chart, and they said good luck with that one, because it's almost impossible to, you know what I'm talking about, a flow chart. Here's where the money starts, or where do you go if you have a problem? You come down here to this level, and how much money is available there, and then where does the service go from there? There's so many departments in that thing, you can't, and they all connect. The flow chart would start with the Department of Human Service, and then it would go down to about 50 different entities under there, maybe 100. And Frank Hermanson might be able to make me a flow chart. I don't know. You got to have a good computer. I know that. I haven't answered your question at all. And my old history teacher would have said, in a confused and bungling way, I've tried to answer it, but it's not for lack of interest in trying. So,
Dr. Annenberg.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Annenberg from Carroll, and I'm, as anybody can see, I'm elderly and crippled up and living alone, within a half a block of Fairview Apartments, and I'm interested in Second Amendment stuff and self-defense bills. And they call them stand your ground bills. And I got one number of a bill that's in the Senate, House file, Brian, 52. And I'd like both of you, if you aren't already, to be co-sponsors and get a barrel of other sponsors, and even in a Grand Stalling Senate, to get people on record. Because this is and if there's any other gun bills that surface, we'd like to know about it. And I was just going to share my experience as a local physician here for many years. I've never seen, to my knowledge, a blue baby. And this was when most of the farm families had their own shallow wells. Of course, that was before barrels and barrels of fertilizer, and I understand that. And another thing that picked up in my mind, Mark, that I've often said that God can bring good out of bad. Those lawsuits against those 3 counties up there. And that's a good idea to pursue, is filtering marshes at the end of all those drainage areas.
Ditches, yeah.
And there's a duck hunter I really am quite interested in.
We're planning on you highlight.
Pardon me?
The Ducks Unlimited group is very interested in this.
Tell them to get on the stick and tell them I'm going to be on their butt if they aren't.
they're willing to put up some bucks, so that's
good.
I think there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, you get a volunteer plus government and you get something done.
There's 3,000 drainage districts in Iowa, so we would be now Iowa's the land of 3,000 lakes for sure if we get this all done. But it's going to cost a lot of money because land prices are going down, which is not the best thing, but they are getting cheaper. So
Getting back on this House File 52, there's other bills, numbered bills on the same subject. You probably know him, he's a new rep from Denison, Steve Holt, as a sponsor, main sponsor on the House File bill, and Rick Bertram for Sioux City, Senator.
Rick brought it before our caucus the other day, and every member of the minority in the Senate signed on the bill, including myself.
Praise the Lord. You're way ahead of me.
Stand your ground, Bill.
How about Brian? What's any word about Second Amendment bills or this particular bill in the House?
Matt Winchell is working on a Second Amendment bill right now.
The what?
Matt Winchell is working on a Second Amendment bill right now.
I kind of like a copy of those bills. And I got no email. You have to snail mail them to me and I'll pay the postage.
Okay.
That's enough.
Doc, next time you should probably bring a goose hat or something.
I got some of them too.
Yes, sir.
My name is Dennis Ritchie, and I'm a representative of CCI, it's Citizens for Community Improvement. I just want to say that I am honored and pleased to be in your presence, Senator, and I am glad to hear these issues that you are addressing, and I want to wish you well, and thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chuck Dicebreck, CEO of Western Iowa Networks here, a communication provider in Carroll, Litterdale, Reed, and Westside. And I know you two did come to our roundtable, our state association roundtable in December. I want to thank you for that. Trying to educate you on where the governor intends to take his broadband bills. He's been talking about broadband the last 2 or 3 years. He's introduced Connect Every Iowan, now it's Connect Every Acre. Senator Sodders just introduced Senate File 60, and it's his version of what he thinks we should do with the broadband bill based on what Governor Branstad has a vision for Iowa. Governor Branstad's looking at, he introduced about $5 million as some grant funds to try to expand broadband in Iowa. I was just talking to Mr. Cook here, and he lives about a mile south of Carroll, and they can't get broadband. Broadband was defined at 4 megabits down, 1 megabit up, and then it went to 10 over the last year. It went to 10 by 1. Now the FCC Chairman Wheeler said the minimum should be 25 by 3. But we've got people that live out in these rural communities that are still working off of dial-up. So the governor talks about, you know, the need for broadband. Debbie Durham, the Economic Development Director, she says one of her top 4 initiatives is if you're going to have economic growth, then you need to have, you know, the glass highway. So Brian, you talked about, you know, building out infrastructure and supporting infrastructure. I think that the glass highway, the digital infrastructure, you know, digital highway is just as important. Other states around us, as these bills get introduced, I just ask you to do your homework on what other states around Iowa are doing, because they're blowing Iowa out of the water. New York, and granted we can't compare ourselves with population as we can to New York, but New York is putting up $500 million to entice broadband companies to build out so they won't be left behind. There's a reason why Facebook and Google and Microsoft came to Iowa. We do have some good infrastructure. The problem is it's being left out of the rural communities. And if you really want to entice students to come back to Iowa, come back to our communities to live, they need broadband. Our businesses, you know, TFI down in Willie, you know, they're struggling. They want to grow their business. They can't grow their business because the local provider, which is CenturyLink, you know, has not provided any type of broadband dollars to build out there. Now it's expensive. I mean, it's from our standpoint, when we look at it, it's $25,000 a mile to build out to the rural areas. Some of the larger companies, they'll tell you it's about $45,000. I'm sure it is when you add in every bit of hours in the labor and the engineering costs. But $5 million to put towards broadband expansion for the state, 99 counties. I mean, that's $50,000 a county. I mean, it's going to take Carroll County, you know, 140 years to get built out. We don't have that time. So it's extremely important. Broadband is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. You got to be up there with, you know, if you need power, the next thing is you need some type of a broadband connection if you're going to have any type of business growth. And our farmers, you know, it's high tech now. And it's not like it was in the old days. They need real-time numbers, and it's very important. Connecting every acre, quite frankly, it makes no sense. I mean, it really doesn't. You know, to say we're going to put a connection in every tractor before we want to get those connections to the homeowners and the businesses that have been paying their bills for years. If you can get it to the home, you can get it to the tractors. So I say we need to make sure we keep our focus on, you know, the broadband initiative. What the governor wants to do, I think it sounds good, but I just ask you guys to do your research, reach out, you know, and educate yourselves and understand, you know, $5 million isn't going to go anywhere. So if we really want to grow Iowa, we really want to grow our rural communities and bring people back, you know, the college kids, if they don't want to go to Grandma and Grandpa's house if they don't have a broadband connection. Well, that's pretty sad, you know. So let's keep that in mind. It's one of the governor's top 4 things he wants to get done this year, but let's make sure it's right. Let's not do a Band-Aid and think wireless is going to do it all, because quite frankly, the wireless infrastructure cannot support it. It's got to be wireline, it's got to be fiber optic, but it is expensive. But keep in mind, that investment is probably a 50-year investment. You know, you put a fiber optic cable in the ground, there's really no life expectancy yet. They haven't determined the life expectancy. It's the equipment on both ends that needs to be upgraded. But the real investment is that fiber optic cable put down the highway. So please keep that in mind.
We have time for one last question. Sir.
I'm Charlie Nixon. I'm from Coon Rapids. I want to talk just 1 minute about school finance. And some of the things that Rhonda and this gentleman over here said about understand the issue, I think is really important. I understand you've got money problems, but if you understand how school finance works, I think there are ways that you can improve school districts and their ability to educate kids without spending any more money, just by freeing up some of the ways the school districts are able to generate their income. One of those ways, I'm just speaking about Coon Rapids. And by the way, Mark, I know $100,000 in a county budget is tough to cut, but Coon Rapids Bear cut $350,000 out of a $4 million budget last year, and that's tougher. And all the districts around here are going through the same boat. I don't know how much Carroll cut last year. I don't think it was quite that. In the general fund, you have transportation costs. Coon Rapids spent $200,000 last year in transportation. That's not a direct education benefit, but school districts have infrastructure funds, and they have a lot of them. And they're building new schools, so forth, but if they were able to use some of those infrastructure funds to pay for transportation, in Coon Rapids, that would free up $200,000 more for education, direct education services. In Coon Rapids, or in school districts, you can buy new school buses out of the infrastructure funds. But if they break down, you have to use general fund dollars to fix them. We spent $25,000 last year on a new transmission. And that's a lot of money when you're talking about educating kids. So I understand you might not have enough money or you have other priorities. But if you understand, I don't know if it means a new law or it just needs a change in regulation, but those are the sort of things that could help school districts. And to go along with this guy's comments too, a lot of school districts are relying on the one-on-one initiative. And there are school districts around here that don't have very good internet service. And if you're preparing your curriculum and you're teaching using the internet and it's not working, that's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. I got a letter, actually a handwritten letter. I'm not promoting this idea, but I get very few of these, and I want to read it to you because it speaks to the problem you're talking about here, and I want to talk about categoricals a little bit anyway, because it also comes up under mental health. So bear with me. It says, Dear Mr. Siggebart, hello, my name is Steve. I'm not going to say his last name. I'm a farmer in Sac County of your district. My kids go to school at Ridgeview High School, which is in the towns of Early, Nemaha, Shaler, Galva, and Holstein. I want some help fixing an unfairness towards our kids in their school. The Iowa law that limits how many dollars a school can spend per student includes busing and transportation. Our kids are getting $700 per student less in education than a neighboring school that doesn't have to bus from town to town. Their busing costs are only $50 per student. The very law that is supposed to keep all kids in Iowa on a level and equal playing field as far as education is discriminating against kids in rural areas in consolidated schools. Please help us make money for education go to education, not fuel for the bus. So I think you can relate to that, and you actually said that in your comments here just a minute ago.
Well, and if you're talking about whole grade sharing, and a school district's trying to save money by doing that, what's going to be the largest cost of whole grade sharing? Transportation. So the money they save, a lot of it is used on transportation.
I was a school bus driver for 16 years also, so I can relate to this problem of transportation between schools. Our WEVA's been doing this since the 50s when they relocated, and it's a real struggle, not only for the bus driver but for the kids riding on that extra distance, and thank God fuel prices are going down. There's another thing that popped up. This is a newsletter that comes from the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And in here, there's comments about, for all the talk, not a single significant change since Sandy Hook. And remember, Sandy Hook was where was it Pennsylvania, where the student came in and with a handgun in Connecticut, and killed a few other students. The recent report of that tragic event identifies the key problems: the siloed systems of education, physical health and mental health care for children, and yet the tone of the report continues to blame his mother, if you remember. So it's talking about the silos, and the silos are those categoricals. I don't know how many it's a difficult subject too to get your arms around. Superintendent Cordes did a pretty good job last year in articles he put in the Carroll Times trying to explain how the school budgeting works. But how many categoricals are there, Superintendent Nielsen? And if we would decat those categoricals, that would solve your problem about fixing the bus, and you can buy a new one, but you can't fix it with the same money. I don't know where the final supplemental aid is gonna end up. It's gonna be different in the Senate than it was in the House, which passed 1.25% last week. I don't know, it'll probably come up this week, but I haven't seen it on the calendar. It's on the, I don't think it's even on the calendar yet in the Senate. So, you know, if I would offer an amendment to decat the categoricals, would that help your situation out significantly?
Well, I don't know what about the other categoricals, but that particular one that I mentioned certainly would.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a superintendent. I don't.
Usually when we offer amendments, here's how the minority is usually treated. They say, the dialogue goes like this. Somebody will stand up and say, it's not, what's the right word? It's not germane to the rest of the subject. So you get up and have a big powwow up in the front, down there in the pit, over whether your amendment is germane to the rest of the bill. I don't see, if we're doing allowable growth, how something could be called not germane if it dealt with freeing up categorical money. So we'll have to see how that one goes. But you know, that's something we can do that's not going to cost us anymore. You already have it. It's just a fear, I think, probably that you'll treat it. I don't know what started it in the first place, but they wanted designated money go into certain areas, I'm sure, is what started it in the first place. And maybe that's lost, maybe that's way past its time. You know, those areas aren't the same as they used to be. So I'll have to do some investigation, and I'm sure you'll be willing to help me. I get your emails, by the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, great crowd this morning. The bewitching hour is upon us. The gentleman, I believe, will stay for a few minutes and answer your individual questions, should you have some. They both offered to do that. I'd like to introduce the rest of the Chamber Legislative Committee members. If they would please stand and be recognized. Where's my friend Judy? In the back of the room. More importantly, though, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being in attendance this morning. It's been a great discussion, and